Okay.
Ya, Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Saya Ella Royanti Ruslan. Semua boleh panggil saya Ella. Saya merupakan perantara anda untuk program hari ini yang bertajuk Malaysian Film Aims Getting to OSCARS. Saya juga merupakan pengerusi untuk Pertubuhan Suara Kreatif Kesenian Generasi Muda. Dan pada hari ini kita ada tetamu jemputan yang istimewa iaitu Mr.Gerald T.Olson, yang beliau pernah berkhidmat sebagai pengarah produksi di HBO untuk siaran di buah negara seperti di Amerika Syarikat, United Kingdom, Kanada dan juga Australia. Selain daripada itu, beliau merupakan seorang pensyarah untuk beberapa buah universiti di Amerika Syarikat dan beliau merupakan seorang penerbit filem untuk beberapa buah major studios dan juga TV networks di Amerika dan juga luar negara. So now I'm going to start our conversation in English. So sir, how are you?
I'm pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm good. Right, I'm good. Okay. Tell us about yourself and also your experience.
Okay. So where are you, in Kuala Lumpur?
Yes, I'm in Kuala Lumpur.
How many people live there?
Sorry?
How many people live in Kuala Lumpur?
Many. I don't know. Maybe a million.
A lot, huh? A lot of people. Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I won't talk about my childhood, but I went to university at San Francisco State University, which has a pretty well-known film program. And I got a degree in film production from there. And I'm from San Francisco originally. I moved to Los Angeles very quickly after I graduated, within about 6 weeks of graduation. And I tried to get, I literally sent my college resume around and knocked on doors and called people on the phone and tried to get myself in the industry. I didn't know anybody. I was really doing it all on my own. So finally, after a couple of months, I called from a guy and he said, "You want to work?" And I went, "Yes." And he said, "Are you an editor?" And I went, "Yes." So anyway, I got a job doing color grading on a television show for dailies, just for dailies, not the final thing. So I'd go to the lab and I'd go get the film from the location, which was about 100 miles from LA. I'd drive there, drive back, drop the film off at the lab, and then I'd supervise video transfers so that they could see dailies. Anyway, I did that. And then I became an on-set production assistant on this particular show, children's television show. I did a couple of those. Then I started, the production manager who hired me said, "Well, you ought to work for the Corman," meaning Roger Corman, who was a well-known, low-budget producer in Hollywood who'd done lots and lots of movies, gave lots of people their start in the industry, like people like Scorsese, Coppola, Jonathan Kaplan, a whole world of people who work in show business, my age and a little younger, got their starts with Roger Corman. So I was able to start working in the production side, and I quickly moved up from being a PA to being a second AD to being a first AD within a few years. And it seemed like a long time at the time, but actually by the time I was 25, I was working as a first AD on feature films in LA. So I did that for a while. I got into the Directors Guild. I worked at Universal on the Buck Rogers TV show as a second AD, even though I got in the guild as a first AD. I did do a show as a first, but as a first AD, and they were going to offer me the show, and a friend of mine was working for an older producer, and they needed someone to produce a horror movie. And I said, "Well, yeah, I'll do it." I'd never done it before, of course. Most of my experience had been, I'd done some production management, and I'd been a first AD quite a bit. But anyway, I took this job. I produced film for these older producers that didn't really want hands-on involvement. So I was there with the director, casting, and working on the script, and supervising the production, managing, dealing with actors and contracts, and dealing with a director who was, like all directors, there's a little push-pull, you know, back and forth when you're dealing with directors. But we got the film done. Wasn't a great movie, but it sort of launched me as either a producer or associate producer. So to make a long story a little bit shorter, not too long after that, I got a job on a movie called Repo Man as the associate producer, which essentially meant that I was a line producer on the show. And I supervised the production, a production manager working under me. You know, I figured out the budget. You know, I was deeply involved in getting this film made, which became a pretty well-known cult film later. Let's see. After that, I worked on a number of indie movies, and I started working on A Nightmare on Elm Street for New Line Cinema. They'd hired me to produce A Nightmare on Elm Street for them. They already had the script, they already had a director, but I was working with Wes Craven. And unfortunately, they didn't have any money at the time. And HBO offered me a job as an executive, and okay, because I'd been producing Nightmare on Elm Street out of my living room. And it was not so, it was a little bit shaky who had the, you know, if they had the money or not. So I decided to work there, and that was great because I got to work. I'd never done a corporate job, and you know, so I was supervising movies for HBO and TV series, and I worked while at HBO. I worked in the UK, I worked in Australia, and I worked in Canada and the United States. So it was good for me to get around and work in other countries. That was a good thing. And then New Line, and I had quit Nightmare on Elm Street, but New Line needed someone to be their head of production. They were moving to the West Coast, moving part of their operation to the West Coast. So they called me and they asked me to be the head of production and also to be an in-house producer. And I went, yeah, okay. Anyway, we made a deal, and I said, yeah, okay, I'll do this. So, you know, it was after not quite 2 years at HBO at New Line. And while at New Line, I was supervised all the production, but I was directly a hands-on producer on at least one movie a year. And usually I was very hands-on with all of them. I was involved in, when I was producing, I was involved, you know, with casting and script, that sort of thing. Otherwise, I was just sort of being the studio's overseer, making sure that we were making a good picture. And I sort of had the power of the purse. I could say, you can do this, or you can't do that, or you know, I could suggest things and I'd get listened to. So it was a good position. I produced a couple movies while at New Line, one of which, The Hidden, that I produced in-house. You know, the script came, but I worked on the project with the director, Jack Shoulder, very much hand in glove. We cast the film, cut the film, and unfortunately, we didn't have more say over the exhibition. But anyway, the movie won a bunch of film festival awards at Avoriaz and Sitges. These are fantasy and horror movie type things. It's a science fiction action movie, and so that was a good thing. And you know, I was involved in all the Elm Street movies a lot as a second unit director. I did a lot of action directing. I did a lot of specialty sequences. In fact, I did a huge part of the ending of Nightmare on Elm Street 4 uncredited because I'm in the Directors Guild and I couldn't take credit. So basically I was just helping out. But I ended up doing a lot of that ending of that movie. But I was getting a little bit unhappy with working at New Line. There was a project that I really liked that was in the development pipeline there, and I pushed very hard to get that movie made. It was called House Party, which became it. It's a movie about black teenagers. They're really, it's a movie, one of the most movies that I'm most proud of. You know, I left the company actually and produced the movie after I had left. And it became a hit. And then I just went out as an independent producer for hire, which was an interesting ball game. I worked for 20th Century Fox. I worked for a lot of different people. You know, HBO, I did a show for HBO as a producer. And these, you know, were producer for hire jobs. I did not generate those projects. Sort of a few years after I left New Line, like about years later, they called me up and asked me if I was interested in this project called Dumb and Dumber, because they didn't trust the producers that had the script, and they wanted to that they trusted. And so strangely enough, they trusted me. And so I ended up executive producing that movie. I was also the second unit director, and you know, very hands-on, on location the whole time with the unit. And of course that became a big hit, and which was great. And then I continued working. I did a lot of television at that point. I got hired by NBC. I produced TV movies for them. I started producing more TV movies and the occasional feature. You know, that was that. So I'm still doing that, but now I'm only doing stuff that I develop myself. I have a project that I'm supposed to direct whenever things start up again in show business, now that they're pretty on hold. But you know, I've got a number of projects I developed with this small company, independent company. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm teaching producing, where Ella was one of my students at Academy of Art University in San Francisco. And I also teach at Diablo Valley College in the San Francisco Bay Area. So that's me, my professional life anyway.
Okay,
so what else can I tell you about?
Okay. So interesting. So what does a film producer do? Can you explain a little bit?
What producers do?
Yeah.
Well, producers do a lot of things, and there are a number of different kinds of producers. Probably been all of them at different points. Sort of the classic Hollywood studio producer, sometimes they'd come up with a project and they'd take it to the studio, and the studio would say yes or say no. They would develop it and work with the writers. Sometimes they would be assigned a project by the studio, and they would you know, work with the writers, work with the director, help cast the movie, supervise the movie, making sure they're a good film. That was sort of the old-time studio way of doing things. And in reality, a lot of what I did at New Line was very much sort of thing. I was mostly assigned projects, and that's one of the reasons I left, because I didn't like all the stuff I was doing. Some of the ones I really liked, like my last film, Their House Party, which is something that I pushed into production. And so that was sort of a classic role. I found a project that I liked, I sold it to the studio, and I got them to give us more money than they wanted to do. And I made a film. We made a successful film, and I worked with the director and the producer very closely on that. And I took an executive producer at it because it was a team of African-American brothers, and I didn't want to step on their whole team thing, you know. So anyway, you know, credits they can mean a lot of things. Then of course you have hired producers who are brought into a project. Now those producers be line producers, where they're on the set, they're there working with the director, trying to keep the project on track. They make all the executive decisions. They also deal with actors contracts. They deal with agents. They deal directly with the director and the cast and the post-production team, and with really the entire scope of the movie. Good producer for hire will not just be a line producer, but they will also understand filmmaking and be good with understand story, because a lot of time on a set, you have things that you have to decide about story. And in fact, way back when I was his first AD, I used to stand on the set sometimes with directors, and we'd take pages out of the script because we knew we couldn't finish the work. So we'd decide which pages were the least damaging to take out. So having a very thorough understanding of the process of, you know, every aspect of filmmaking, I think, is not all producers have it. Producers are purely development people. They don't show up on the set. Some producers do it all. They show up on the set. Some producers specialize in really just dealing with the money and the personalities during the production. That's sort of your classic line producer job. However, you need a lot of interpersonal skills to do that job. So it's not, just anything. It's a huge job. So what else do producers do? I mean, producers deal with the cast. If there's an issue with the cast, the producers, there are actors that I've had to say, look, show up on time, that sort of thing. Or, if everything's going great, you tell people, you represent the studio, you represent the money, you represent the people who are going to exhibit the movie. So you have an enormous amount of power and an enormous amount of responsibility too. But just as I said, some actors that I had issues with, I'd have to kind of put them in their place, but also giving people compliments, telling them how good their work is. That's another part of it. Making people feel part of a family, because making a movie is a very intense experience, and it's nice when you feel that people actually care about you and appreciate your work. So as a producer, that's part of what I always try and do, is let people know how much they're appreciated and how important their work is, because it is. And, I'm a big believer that it takes everybody on a film set, everybody on a film crew, from the director on down to the PAs, to make a good movie. And it needs to work in harmony to get the best out of, out of the situation. So that's sort of my philosophy. Did I answer your question?
Yes. And then what it takes to produce a great movie, in your opinion?
Aha. Okay, well, here's what I think takes. This is sort of the classic answer, and I'm not the only person that thinks this. The first thing you need is a great story. You need a strong, compelling story. The next thing you need are great actors. You need the best actors that you can get. And in fact, every actor in your movie matters. Every single line spoken by anybody needs to feel convincing, to feel real. You need a good director who can work well with people, who can get the best out of the cast, and who has a good visual style. That's very important, particularly now, because visual style is so much in the forefront with movie making. So much of it is spectacle these days in the big studio films. But there's no substitute for knowing how to tell a good story. That is the most important thing. And your greatest assets are, once that story and you've got a terrific script, you need really good actors to pull it off. Those are the things that I think matter the most, story and cast. And then, of course, you need a good director who knows what they're doing, who inspire confidence in the cast. The cast has to trust the director. And so does, the crew. Certain directors are more actor directors, and they're not that technical. And I've worked with some of them where they're big in consulting with the DP and the production designer about a lot of things, because that's not their area of expertise. But that's okay. It doesn't matter. A director doesn't have to know everything. A director just has to know how to do their job, to deliver the work on the set so that the editor has enough to work with. That's important. But yeah, that's, to me, that's it. Great characters, a great story is going to have great characters. Stories that have things of interest in them, something that's going to show people something new, some sort of compelling situation that makes the audience go, oh, wow, when they see it. It could be, in a big action movie, it could be some big pickle moment. But in a movie about just a few people, it's got to be about character and about things that happen that surprise you, but you believe them and you buy into what's going on. Or they give you a moment where you go, oh my, I never thought that before. That's important because the audience loves to be shown something new that they didn't expect. And I think that's very important.
And what are powerful elements that should have in a film?
Well, like I said, the most important, well, look, clearly you need a great story, you need a great cast, a good director, you need a good director of photography, production designer, costume designer. You need everybody to do their job and do it well. And particularly the people involved in the visual side. And I don't mean just the DP, the production design, the costumes, the makeup and hair, the props, the set decorating. It all matters. Every bit of it matters. The better it is, the better it is. It's called production value. It brings you into a world and you believe it for that 2 hours that you're watching. So to me, those are the things. But, you know, number one is story. Number one. You can't get away from that because you could have every other thing. And if the story doesn't really compelling, no one will care.
Then what is the difference between commercial potential, artistic potential, and box office potential?
Well, commercial and box office are the exact same thing because you're selling tickets. So look, I think clearly looking at trends in the motion picture industry, there are a number of things. You don't know what's going to hit. First of all, you don't, unless you're doing big budget blockbuster type movies, but all those are based on pre-existing literary properties. And what I mean by that is, you know, something that exists on paper, like a comic book, a book, like, you know, the Harry Potters. I don't know how big those were in Malaysia, but they were big worldwide. They were, you know, those books were read. They were among the most popular books ever written. So adults read them, kids read them. So they had a huge audience. So if you want something commercial, you need to start with something that people already like, they already know, you know. So that's why these Marvel movies are so popular. That's why Harry Potter movies were so popular. That's why I'm trying to think of, you know, what else is mega popular. Well, you know, interestingly enough, another genre that is extremely popular is horror. And in horror movies spend a lot of money. I don't know if the movie Get Out, the Jordan Peele directed film Get Out, was big in your country, but it was huge in the United States. It was made for $4.2 million. Why? Great story. It told people, it was about race. And now you know the United States is boiling over with racial tension, and Black people are, you know, demanding to be treated the way they're treated. And Get Out actually has those elements in it. And it's funny, and it's scary. So it's got all the elements. You know, the producer, Jason Blum, he makes a lot of movies every year. He doesn't spend a lot on any of them because he's not sure which is going to be good. That one had all those elements. It didn't have any real stars in it. It had well-known character actors, but it was a genre that people like. And the director, Jordan Peele, had a big following in this country, in the United States. So the movie that cost $4.2 million, box office gross was $225 million. Now that is a profitable movie. That is a huge commercial success. That movies like Wonder Woman will never make that kind of profit because they cost so much. You know, your average movie has to hit close to 3 times its negative cost, which is the cost that it took to actually put film and deliver the film at the box office to break even. So box office is a hard thing to succeed at. You know, a lot of people will make money in other markets later. Box office is the hardest one to make money in. But story, something different, compelling, something that hits the times, something that is interesting to people at that time. You know, artistic potential, all I can say is tell a great story. That's it. You know, have all those elements I said, because it could be artistically successful and commercially successful. It could be, you know, I mean, I'm not one who likes to judge artistic value of a movie right off the bat. If I like it or I think it's good or it affected me, I feel moved by it, you know, I may think that it has artistic, but I'm not a person who believes in making obscure, offbeat movies that no one will ever see. I think an artistically successful film will find an audience. But when you're making a movie, whether you're going for something that's not a giant commercial, you know, giant hit, you just want to make a good movie and you want to make enough money that people will let you make another movie, right? That's important. You'll get, you know, all those elements of good story, great cast, good director together. And if you have those, you could tell a small story and you probably will still have some success with it. You know, and, you know, certain movies that have artistic value, they live on for a long time also. You know, they have a long life. People watch them on, you know, on streaming, on television, they'll many different ways to see those movies and for them to make money. But, you know, you can look at the big movies almost all based on big literary properties. You can look at smaller films and they're not, but the ones that do well with the audience are the ones that have those important elements: great story, great cast, good direction. That's what does it. Okay.
And what kinds of film genre does like Academy Award or Oscars like that? Is there anything?
That's a hard one to describe, because the years in the last several years, I mean, first of all, forget making a big blockbuster action movie. You're not going to get an Oscar or anything except technical nominations. A movie that tells a story that's compelling, tells a story that has some emotional or connect the audience. Two movies that I can tell you won screenplay Oscars that were terrific movies. Black Klansman, that was a Spike movie, and I don't know if it played outside the United States that much because it's a very American story. And also Jojo Rabbit, a movie that did well, didn't do that great. These were not huge commercial success. Oh, Black Klansman was a very successful movie. I think it cost $15 million. I don't think it made the 100 million mark, but it did extremely well at the box office. And both those guys who were the writers, Taika Waititi, I think is how you say his name, and Spike Lee, both won Oscars, screenplay Oscars. Best Picture, a couple years ago, Moonlight, a coming of age story about a young, gay, black kid who becomes a gay black man. It's a story that had never been told before the way it was told. And it was told very sensitively. It was a low budget movie. The movie cost less than $2 million and it won Best Picture. Okay. The last film that won Best Picture was by the Korean director. It's just escaping me right now what his name is, but I think you know what I'm talking about. You know, it was a domestic story, but you know what? It was different. The Oscar audience is looking for things that are interesting, different, that deal with topics that matter to people. Not just, you know, blowing everything up and, you know, dealing with aliens. I mean, most of these stories are about human beings. And I think you're finding more and more that's what people are interested in for Oscar, you know, Oscar bait, so to speak. Things that tell beautifully told stories that are compelling, that strike the audience in a place where they maybe even didn't know they wanted to see. Moonlight was a very powerful movie. If somebody told me that they wanted to make a movie about the coming of age story of a gay black kid in Florida, I would, okay, interesting. But if it was going to be, if it was done well, it could be wonderful. And if it was done poorly, it would just, no one would remember it. So, you know, I think stories that, you know, it's like if I was making a movie in Malaysia right now, if I was a Malaysian filmmaker, you know, I think telling a story about maybe a woman in Malaysia and her struggle and her life would be interesting. Because number one, the struggles of women in general are interesting experiences, but I think the struggles of women in a Muslim country are very interesting. So, you know, women have, you know, hurdles no matter where they live. But I think that most people would say, oh, that's an interesting story. But again, the right story, the right cast, good direction. But the thing that would sell a movie like that is the feeling of authenticity. And what's good today in filmmaking, I think, is that anybody can make a movie. You can get a digital camera for not that much money, and you can make a movie. You can edit it digitally on, you know, Adobe Premiere, and you can, you know, you can do a sound mix. I could do all that stuff with things that people can afford, who aren't rich and aren't millionaires, but still, you know, the one does cost some money, and you can do it for less, you know, but you want to get the best actors possible. It really makes a difference, and make sure that your story, that you've really worked hard on your story, that doesn't have cliches, that every scene matters. Every scene matters. You know, no scenes that don't mean anything, you know. And the character struggle needs to be, you know, needs to be intense. And they have to hit, you know, they have to hit bottom, and then they have to figure out a way to get back up to the top. I mean, that's classic storytelling. People love that. They want to see people struggle. They want to see people maybe not succeed and then somehow figure out how to succeed in whatever it is that they're doing. So I just think being authentic and telling a true story that's real to you, that has that discipline of, you know, script writing that's good, I think is the most important thing. And if an Oscar, great. If you don't win an Oscar and you made a good movie, you've done something very few people can do.
Okay. And why many countries want their films to be an Oscar? Does winning Oscar meaning anything, you think?
Yeah, it does. It means you'll get to make another movie, and it means you'll probably make some money, and you'll probably go on a lecture tour, and people on television, and they'll ask you questions. And but what it means is, yeah, you get there's always an Oscar bounce for every movie, so you'll make, that is almost certain, and you'll get a chance to make another movie. I mean, that's a big thing in itself, getting a chance to make another movie. That's the hardest thing too. If the first movie is a big success, what are you going to do for the follow-up? How do you do that? It's a tricky thing. You know, all the elements, you know what I'm talking about, all the elements coming together to make a good film is a hard thing to do.
Do you think that the film production and stories must demonstrate to cultural diversity, sustainability, and empowerment to like get shortlisted in OSCARS?
I'm sorry, what was that again? Can you ask me that again?
Is the film production and stories must demonstrate to cultural diversity, sustainability, and empowerment, you think, to get the shortlisted in OSCAR, the storylines and all the...
Well, look, well, if you're a Malaysian, you should be telling a Malaysian story because you know Malaysia, right? Cultural diversity, yeah, people are interested in other cultures. They are interested in cultures. There's a certain exotic quality that people like. They want to see something different in a new context. So cultural diversity is great. I just think the most important thing, regardless of cultural diversity or not, is to make something compelling that is of the quality, high quality movie made well that tells that story about a culture that Americans maybe don't know much about. Is, you know, that is a good thing. And so, you know, it's a difficult gamble, but it's, you know, like I said, it's more important to a filmmaker to try and be true to themselves and make something really good than it is to think about Oscars. I think that it's such a fleeting, ethereal thing that if you worry about it very much, you're wasting too much of your time thinking. You can never come up with a formula to win an Oscar. You know, that's not going to happen. So,
what does Best Picture mean in the Oscar?
Well, like I said, it means you're going to make more money. What was that again? What does Best Picture mean at the Oscars? And then you said something else.
Is that if like if we win the Oscars, the Best Picture, is there any benefit that we can get?
Yeah, of course. Well, you get, like I said earlier, you know, you win Oscars, people will give you another chance to make a movie. You'll make money, which you need to live. You'll get fame and notoriety for at least 15 minutes, at least for a week, maybe, or two. You will be seen by more people, and you'll widen your network. You'll widen your web of people that you know. So this is all good. There's no downside. It's all up. It's all an upside. But the biggest thing is that you'll get a chance to make another movie. And if you're a disciplined person, you don't let it go to your head and think you're great, then you'll probably have a pretty good, you know, you'll be a presence, put it that way. People will know who you are and people will respect you, you know, I think. But, you know, there have been some Best Picture winners that now people go, why did that movie win, you know? But I think opening up, you know, with movies like Moonlight and then the last one that won, the Korean film that won, those movies showed that there's a lot of room for new things and interesting things. So I think it's wide open. I really don't think there's, you know, any formula except quality.
So this is the last question. What advice would you give to filmmakers out there, especially Malaysian filmmakers, because a lot of them want to get their film eligible for an Oscar?
Well, I give them the same advice that I gave everybody in this little conversation we had right from the beginning. Tell a great story. Tell an authentic story that is true, that you believe in. You know, that's your number one, is making sure you've got a great script, great actors, really good director. The rest of it will take care of itself. Get a good editor too. You know, you need everybody you work with, you need to be good. People, you know, you get people who are talented, particularly in the acting part of it. That's where your authenticity is going to come through. You really need that. You know, I think it really helps.
Okay.
So just be true to yourself. Be Malaysian.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I think that's all right now. I hope that in future we can talk again, and it's a very nice discussion. Thank you and see you again.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, you're very welcome, Ella. Good luck to you.
Okay. Take care, sir.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.